that if, let's say, if I'm going to use this, it's going to be very easy for everyone. But I'm also pretty sure that you are well aware with the multiple intelligence that we have. So if, let's say, we have these kinds of multiple intelligence, for example, one is a visual person, one is a intrapersonal, one is a intrapersonal. If, let's say, you are going to do this without looking at how good or how weak they are, this can be a problem because you do not know. But on the other hand, if, let's say, you're using a traditional instructional material, you can eventually look at whether they are able to write or whether they are able to cope. Okay, because you are there, you are seeing this happening, and therefore you will be able to do it. Let's say, for example, I take one simple example, writing. Okay, so of course, a lot of people have been arguing, saying that we should come out with an app for writing. And of course, with the existence of ChatGPT, writing has become something that is very easy. And of course, we teachers, we have actually detected, I'm sure you also have detected if you are teaching in any of the institution, that students tend to use the ChatGPT a lot. Every single thing is being relied on, right? So when you are doing that, when you're doing too much on that, when you're relying too much on that, that affects your thinking. Of course, it doesn't process matters, it doesn't process information, and therefore there will be issue in you generating ideas for what you're supposed to do. And this will definitely affect them in the future when they start working. I mean, every single thing, ChatGPT cannot be the one who's going to help you, right? So that will be the issue there. So if you see on the traditional material side, if you are putting them down there on the dot, saying that no, you have to write, you try to write. So if you are getting them to write essay writing, if you are getting them to write descriptive factual essay, for example. So if you want them to write a factual essay, if the student can write 80 words, doesn't matter. Because at the end of the day, the point is that student has actually write 80 words genuinely, right? So if, let's say, you are going to use it too much on the text side, one thing that is very simple, of course, you have all these Google Dictionary. If, let's say, students are quite honest, some of them are quite honest, no issue on that. They might actually look for information only, then they adapt the information and they try to do it by themselves. But of course, when you start looking at things like this, if you are going to use the tag base, you will come across, like, students who are very weak in their communication skill can tend to write well. So there will be a part where you will feel that this student cannot speak well but can write well. But well, also I agree that sometimes some students are like that genuinely. But on the other hand, you also have students who cannot speak, genuinely can't, but they write well. So there is a problem. There's this thing, coming from where you get this information, where you get this particular thing, because there's a lot of tag base. So if you do a lot, I mean, not to say I'm stopping you, this is not to say that, you should not, because of course, it is very important for us to get ourselves innovative. Of course, tag-based learning are basically allowing you to be more innovative. That is one thing. But of course, you have to reduce them in your classroom so that, they will understand that this is not the entire learning session, right? So of course, you can engage, you can demotivate, and of course, therefore, instructional material must be carefully planned, selected, organized, refined, and used, right? So when you have certain things with you, you have to really plan. Of course, if you want to see the tech base or you want to see the traditional base, you have to look into it, really plan, look into your syllabus, if you have a syllabus that you can refer to. But of course, it comes back from your curriculum, right? Look at how it's supposed to be done in the curriculum. And of course, when you extract information from your curriculum to your syllabus, it must make sure that it is something that is related to your level, to the level of classes that you're teaching. Right? Of course, syllabus is something that is still on the top part of the entire learning session. But of course, after that, when you come to your scheme of work and also your lesson plan, then you have to look at how are you going to do these certain things and so on and so forth. Right, so you must be carefully planning that and also looking at how you want to select certain information and how this is where it goes from your curriculum, then it goes to your syllabus, then it comes to your lesson plan. So when you come to your lesson plan part, it's already part where you organize. Then after that, you'll refine looking at all the classes that you are actually teaching. So all these things are working. So if, let's say, you are going to select a material, it has to go right for your classroom. Okay, if it is not going right for your classroom, then the entire learning outcome that you have planned is a disastrous. Well, of course, I also will want to say that it's very difficult to get a 100% focus or to get a 100% participation from everyone. But if your material is right, it will work. Trust me, right? Because I have experimented, not to say that it's only traditional material, but any material that you use. This is a very general statement. Any material that you use, anything that you use, that you really looked into the planning, and also you really looked into how you're supposed to organize and allow them to be used in your classroom, trust me, it will work because you have done the refining part. So when you have done the refining part, you eventually know that this material works for your classroom. But of course, on top of all this, if let's say, for example, you want to make sure your material work, you must know your students. Okay, so if you know your students, you know how they will perform, you know what is good for them, what is bad for them, how is it going to be right for them, and so on and so forth, that will definitely work. Any material that you have actually studied through, experimented them, it will definitely work in your classroom. Trust me. Right? So you have to make sure this is there. You have to plan, select. You cannot just take it overnight. Okay, we cannot we as how we want our students to learn certain things that we want to get them to understand. We don't want to also disappoint them by giving them overnight baked work, right? So just like you don't want their overnight baked work, they will also will not want a overnight baked work from you, like before the day you just select something and so on and so forth. Of course, I know that it is very heavy on our side. We have a lot of classes to handle. Obviously, besides classes, we have other things to be handling. But this is where it comes. The main priority for us is our students. So if it is our students, means we have to make sure that we put in a little bit more effort in trying to look at whatever that is needed. All right. Okay. So I'll just go through a little bit between these two. Of course, there's a distinct difference between teaching aids and also instructional material, because you must know this so that when you write your lesson plan or when you plan to take certain material, it will be very helpful if you know them differently, right? Of course, teaching aids are devices they use to deliver information and are not necessarily designed to fulfill course-based goals. So it promotes mental stimulation and sensory engagement, and teaching aid enhances the overall classroom instruction experience. So classic teaching devices, including whiteboards and projectors. So these are some things that we have today. Of course, the whiteboard is there and we have the projector there, right? When we are looking at these two things, we also have to remember that we have to utilize them right. We are in the era where we have the projector, we have the PowerPoint slide, we forget the whiteboard. But there is an existence of a whiteboard in the classroom. So that is the traditional part of the classroom where you still have the whiteboard, and that is the tech-based one, the first, the most simple, the primary tech device, the projector, right? So you have these two things in the classroom, which means that these two things are to be utilized well. Okay, so whatever board that you have, even if you have a blackboard or you still have blackboards in institutions in India, because I've seen, all these things are there, you still have the projector as well. So these two things are needed to be used properly. That's the reason why it's there, right? So when you have this, you have the projector, you have to also utilize the board, because this is where you encourage your students to write, you encourage your students to take notes, and this is where the sensory works. This is where the memory processing works. This is where the scaffolding works, right? And if you want them to memorize certain things, if you yourself are not really using whatever that is there in the classroom, then it is a disaster.